it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna live in abundance. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna. I gotta keep it 100. We gotta stop all the stunting. You know we coming from nothing. Yo, you talking about money, you bluffing. We gotta do something different. We gotta change how we live in. We gotta do better for women. We gotta do better for children. We gotta listen to victims, whether Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter your religion. You gotta stand against the system, or else you just another villain. How you just sitting there chilling?
All right. Elias Ali is in the building.
That's correct. That's correct. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Much appreciate you too, comrade. This guy right here is a really good musician, really good guy. He can rap, sing. He gender bends, he genre bends. And it's just amazing. So I've been trying to get him on for a bit. So let's get right into it. We got my boy Elias Ali right here. Elias, how's it going on, bro?
Feeling really good, man. I'm glad to be here. Feeling just a bunch of positive emotions. I know it's been a while. You've been trying to get me on, and it seemed like I was ducking you, but it wasn't the case. Never the case. I'm glad to be here. Couldn't wait to be. I've always wanted to be interviewed in this type of like podcast format. So this is dope.
Yeah, man. I'm actually like I know you from different outlets, but I'm actually like a good fan of your music, man. I listen to your music. I love it. I share it around and stuff like that. Because it's so well done, and it's also like a blend of giving in a positive message, a struggle, and talking about what options we should be taking, and also this music you want to just vibe with your significant other with. Like you just have all those great outlets that a lot of musicians look for, but don't really do a great thing on executing well. In a way, they'll come off as being out of touch, or they'll come off as being too misogynistic or anything. You have more of like a balanced level on how I feel like the future of just hip hop in general is becoming. What you're seeing right now in the mainstream, a lot of different crowds for a lot of different genres of music, of messages within hip hop, within the hip hop spectrum. There's a lot of crowds that you could go. There's LGBTQ rappers now. There's lesbian rappers. There's trans rappers. There's all kinds of different type of hip hop you can now experience within the 2020s era. Like it's great.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely.
What is your process like when you got started? You know what I mean? Like, did you find yourself evolving into it, or have you always from the beginning felt like you had to bring in such a nuanced message?
I wouldn't say nuanced for sure. I definitely, because I've been writing music since I was a child, so I certainly wouldn't say nuanced, and but I think like I had to learn it because there was always some kind of other message to my music, subliminally, just because I've always loved poetry and I've loved metaphors and things like
Right.
that. I think I found art as an escape. So like I would find a way to like get what I really needed to get out, which may have been something that I didn't feel comfortable talking about, get it out through a dope way where somebody would be like, oh, like cool, like you're talking about this, right? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm really might also be talking about this. So I learned double entendres and metaphors pretty early. So, but I wouldn't say it was nuanced. It was more so like when I was a kid, like this is how it started. My parents were really into gospel and like worship music and like just that kind of like holy and sanctified joint.
Right.
You know what I mean? My mom also loved classics, like the classics, soul and things like that. And like she got me into like certain music and she really wanted me to be rhythmic and she was like very passionate about that. But I think at the stage of their lives that they were in when I was a young child was just trying to just fully devote to God. So like when I would sing a song about love, like as a little child, because I heard Michael Jackson and I was like, I want to sing,
Hmm.
something beautiful, and like, or like I heard like a Marvin Gaye song, and I just wanted to sing something great, you
Right,
know,
right.
and I would sing like love songs at a young age that were very sensual and passionate. And my mom would be like, like who are you singing to? Like, are you should sing songs to God, and like you should sing songs of like, humility and like worship. And I was like, you're right, like, and so I would like write love songs, but like in church, like not to desecrate the church or anything, but like when you listen to the music, it's very loving, it's very sensual,
Yeah.
in an artistic sense of the term. You could
Oh
argue
yeah.
that there's like some like undertones of eroticism in it, like in a subliminal subconscious possibility, like they're saying, raising their hands up, they're saying like, pour down on me with your love and all these things. And it's like, wow, like it was so emotional. So I think like when I was a kid and I would write like things to try to make sure my parents weren't like offended by it, I would make it sound like it was like super religious and like, but I've always wanted to write love songs. And I
Hmm.
think when I got older and got more passionate about like politics and like learned about nuance and learned about these things, like the artists that called to me were like Bob Marley, where you'd have a song where he was just talking about easy skanking and like,
Yeah, yeah,
just, having some, like joints and some like the spliff. And but then he'd also be like, emancipate yourselves
yep,
from mental slavery.
yeah.
None but ourselves can free our minds. I was like, whoa, like that hit me. That hit me in a way at a young age, like 11, 12, where I'm like, wow, I got to say something deeper. But as a kid, I don't think you always know what to say deeper.
Right.
And like, you just kind of like are guided by these adults that tell you what's positive, whether it be like God or being a family man or education. And you're like, that sounds corny for music, kind of. And you're trying to
Hmm.
find that sound. Um, so it was definitely a long actually development to learn how to like make that balance. And I'm still growing in that balance as I continue my journey.
You still consider yourself a pupil,
A pupil, like in regards to
like just
music, like
music
just a
wise?
student?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
100%. I'm constantly studying, like in fact, like, you we had talked earlier and you mentioned I was genre bending.
yeah.
And that was like hard for me because I like so many genres and it's like it's hard to do everything.
Right.
And if you do know how to do a lot of different stuff, it's hard to single in on a crowd. And I think
Yeah.
that's another one of like my ways that I like unintentionally like, you know, sabotage my audience. Like you have to like listen. And if you listen to type to listen to like 15 seconds and it's something that you're like, I'm not into this style, that's you might not be the listener for me. But if you
Hmm.
can listen to like, one song and then listen to the other one and be like, oh, this is R&B. And
Mm.
then, and if you're the type that's like, I'm into rap more, and then you're like, oh, this is rap. Like if you go through it, I'm definitely that type of person, and you can, go to certain projects that I curate in certain ways, that have that kind of sound.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't even know if I answered the question.
No, 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 no. Keep going. I was just saying, right? Because it's I feel like the reason why a lot of people are not a lot of people, but a lot of people are like trying to stay to one sound is because of the popularity they get off of that one sound. But I'm fully convinced, like just being in spaces with artists that like everyone wants to like try other things and do other things, but it's like it's the execution is like do you feel confident enough? Do you feel like you have enough education enough to do it right?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, that was what I was gonna say. I got to stop you right there with the education.
yeah,
Let's stop on the education. So I'm somebody that is very passionate about history. I've just always been like that
right,
since I was a little kid. I wanted to know the beginning of whatever it was. You know what I mean? If there was like an artist, I'll be like, is he the first to do this? And
right,
then you'd have to be like, no, like some other dude, he said this was his influence. And then I want to like know all about that artist.
right.
And I'm like that with like art, like as a fan, I'm not a good artist in
Hmm.
the sense of, visual art. That's never been my gift. But as an observer, like that's how I am. That's how I study art. That's how I study even like revolutionaries, who tend to be very poetic also. That's how I am because I love history and I love like the origins of things.
Mm.
So I remember like I first enjoyed rap music as a baby, but as a baby, I like rap was different when I was a baby. You know what I mean? So in my mind, just the way I perceived it at that time, I was like a
Mhm.
rap purist.
Mm.
And I was like, you can't just do this. Like you have to like be from a certain place. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, and I'm from the Bronx and I'm Puerto Rican, and even I was like, I'm not like, cause like I wasn't in this street life, right? Like I was like I
Mm.
wasn't out here like just making moves like that. And then I moved out of the Bronx at a young age, and I was just like, But as we grew up, right now, it's like there's kids from like anywhere, and I saw a lot of kids get into rap that didn't necessarily have that respect for the history and the origins. So then
Mm.
I was like, now I feel responsible for telling that origin,
Right,
and
right.
that's what got me into rap at like 16 a little bit more seriously, when I was like, not even career wise, just as like I want to study it and I want to get really good at the flows, you
Mm.
know, not just listening to like new stuff, but like going back and you know everything like 96 and before, you know what I mean, going to like Jay-Z's like first album, Reasonable Doubt, and like going to, Nas, and like I remember like a lot, I mentioned that my family was religious. This is a big part of like my come up. I had
Right.
to smuggle music into my house to like get to be able to listen to it and study it.
Mm.
So I've had like CD cases thrown out where I had to restart my studies.
Mm.
And a lot of times, this is real. And like, they find
Yeah,
them,
I'm
what is
smiling
this like?
because my dad's a pastor, and I
Oh,
literally
really? I
we
didn't
got
know that,
similar.
bro.
Yeah, we got similar background with that. I was hiding
That's
music too,
crazy.
man.
Yeah, so like, so I actually recently, rest in peace to DMX when he,
Mm.
yeah, rest in peace to X. He was a
Yeah.
big pivotal moment for me because when I discovered him, also musically was received differently when I was a kid. So like,
Right.
I'm like getting a CD burnt from a friend, sneaking it in, writing a different name on it. Sometimes I'd be able to borrow the real CD. I've had friends' CDs taken and confiscated and thrown out that like
Oh
I borrowed
man.
and had to like I've like gotten, when you're a kid, like something like that's a big deal. So like I've
Yeah.
gotten like like now like they're like, all right, sorry, I'll buy you a new one. Like when I was a kid, I was just like, my parents like took it. I could never buy another copy of that for you. You know what I
Oh
mean?
man.
So like with I started to have to get creative with it,
Mm.
and I had to do a little deception move. You see what I'm saying? I had to unfortunately do a little deception. You know what I mean? And my mom and my mom like would like pull up, and like I would be like, no, that's a Christian CD.
Mm.
Because a lot of the Christian artists began to like also be a little bit more daring in their artwork and things like this. So I'd be like, oh no, that's Christian. DMX, and then there was X, and like he always had like blood and like growl sounds, and but every album he had the prayer.
Which is crazy. Like he
You see what
prayed
I'm
a
saying? So I
lot.
was like, nah, like the blood represents the blood of Christ. You feel? You know what I mean? And I'm like, see, look, he got a prayer for each album. I'm like telling his story, his come up, his testimony, and he would like often uh uh reiterate my story, you know what I mean, with how he is, because he was like kind of the reverend of hip hop, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, as crazy as his music was,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and as wild as his lifestyle was, and I respected him, like it was also important because he was, he's a New Yorker, you know what I mean, but he's got like a lot of Baltimore connections for some reason.
Mm.
And for those listening, I was raised between New York and I spent a little time in New Jersey when I was a little kid. I went to kindergarten and first grade out there, and but most of my life from 7 to age 23, I was in Baltimore County, Maryland. And like I would meet people from this like in like it was always like people that I respected. They'll be like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, such and such. I knew DMX, or I met DMX through this, and oh my 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 husband knows him, or whatever it is. And it would always be people that were like real people, just like tough people, but like real people that like I could, and I was like, wow, like there was always that duality when I would hear about anytime I hear about somebody that has like some kind of Baltimore and New York roots, it makes a special connection to me.
Mm.
Weirdly, it's also the same with Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
He was like, he's buried in Baltimore, but he has like, his old house was on like the Grand Concourse right around the corner from where I'm from, the Bronx. So I
Oh
would
wow.
like walk past there and just like get in my zone with some music in my head, just like, try to get in that zone, like the Ravens, the is named after his poem The Raven.
Yeah, yeah.
So just stuff like that. I take a lot of inspiration from historical figures and put it into my music too.
Mm, mm. Yeah, like 'cause I remember you considering yourself a poet, like as well too, right?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. That's how I've always liked music, but like I think at 7 years old was when like I started poetry and I was
Mm,
into music separately,
mm,
separately. You know what I mean? And then like I think by like 9 and 10 was when I would start like hear lyrics that I was like, that's poetic, like that's, and I would start to really like. I remember, from church, gospel, soul. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to enough Latin music growing up, which is crazy because I'm Puerto Rican. I listen to a lot now. I listen to a lot now. Like I listen to like mad salsa. I learned how to
word.
dance it. I listen to reggaeton now. But growing up, like, my household was like primarily English speaking. My
Mm,
parents would switch to Spanish when they didn't want me to know, when they were hitting it with some deception, when they were just
mhm.
like, hey, like there was some serious talk or like maybe bickering at each other. So I learned, certain words here and there, but you know what I
That's
mean?
funny.
I knew the foods and the cuss words, you know what I
Yep,
mean?
yep. That's what you learn first.
You know, and like, direct demands, you know what I mean, that I might
Right.
get from my mom, exclamations.
So, like, were they forcing you to to speak English, or they just
No,
always
no.
demanded to just talk English, or like they just decided to talk English?
Let me be clear.
Yeah,
Great question. Great question. I'm so glad I get to answer this question.
yeah.
Um, my grandparents are from Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
Both sides. Both sides, um, you know, transitioned to the USA. You know what I mean? They don't like to say immigrated, because like
Right,
it's like a colony of the USA. So they say like
right,
we're citizens. It's owned by the USA. They try to like, because there was a lot of assimilation that was happening at that time.
right,
So my
right.
grandparents that came over, they were very serious about, from what I understand, um, not getting, keeping their heads down and keeping,
Mhm.
and there was a time period in America where like you couldn't even raise the flag in the Bronx. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There was a lot of white flight when Puerto Ricans were moving into certain neighborhoods in the Bronx. You know what I mean?
right.
My mom made her transition to a more northern part of the Bronx, where like around Fordham Road and University. Now, if you go there, like it's like basically like primarily like Latinx hood,
Mm-hmm.
where my grandmother still lives and where I visit often and have a lot of respect for. And if you ever need anything and you find yourself in the Bronx, go to Fordham Road and get yourself fresh. You know what I mean? Go to a cuchitrito, get some empanadas, all that stuff. I was raised in Puerto Rican culture fully, but strangely, like we just were naturally just speaking in English.
Mm-hmm.
Like my grandparents learned English, and their family was like English and Spanish like 50% of the time. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if it was like if they went to an English, they would went to English and Spanish churches. They read the Bible in English and Spanish. They would like read which verse and which one if they were trying to understand it differently. You know what I mean? My parents grew up in the Bronx and
Mm-hmm.
Harlem. My mom is from the Bronx. My father's from East Harlem. He was around African Americans, Italians, other Latinos. You know what I mean? Like, so he was picking up on Spanish slowly growing up here and there, but like his
Mm-hmm.
mother never, he was number 8 of 10 children. His mother never like sat down with him and like even taught him English. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
he was a street kid, just like learning on the streets.
Right,
So
right,
he
right.
actually didn't feel comfortable with his Spanish speaking until he was an adult and he was in work. And like he was working, with a lot of other Latinos. So by the time we came around, I think that they thought that we would just pick it up, but nobody sat down with us and taught us that.
Right,
And
right.
we weren't, once you move us out of this Bronx, now we're living in Baltimore County. It's Black American and Jewish people here in the area of Baltimore that I'm in. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like two different culture shocks. And specifically African Americans that haven't been primarily exposed to large like Latin culture. So I
Right.
was not like, it wasn't like the Bronx where they're like, pape, like talking to me in Spanish and like, dapping me up and like I'm eating like soul food and they're eating like, pastelillos and like tostones. Here, they didn't even know what that was. Like I would say I was from Puerto Rico and they would be like, is that a city in Mexico? You know what I mean?
Oh man.
Um, Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's how I was raised. So it was like I would cling to my identity through, learning about the history and like
right.
trying to get into the music and like trying to learn a couple Spanish words here and there, but like it just wasn't like the culture that I was primarily raised in. I'm proud to say that I'm working on my Spanish, you know. Soy aprendiendo más y más todos los días. I learn more and more. I learn more and more each day. I still am very sharp, more so on the history.
Word, word,
But I can cook a mean arroz con candules, like
word.
serious, like I can cook some good Puerto Rican food, and my wife is fluent in Spanish. We go back and forth sometimes and reconnected on the island, La Isla,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, it's a beautiful journey, man. It's an ongoing journey, like there's some, you know, Bronx and Puerto Rican slander that happens, where they're just like Puerto Ricans. There's an ongoing joke in the Latinx community that Puerto Ricans speak Spanish in English,
Mhm.
which is basically true. But I want to strengthen my Spanish and hey man, who knows? Maybe one day full immersion, just return to La Isla, just
Word. Yeah,
die
man.
among the die among the sunset of the Caribbean.
Yeah, man. Sounds beautiful. You know what I mean? That sounds like great. what is what are the Spanish Latino artists that you're listening to right now? Like
I
who's your top five right now?
Number one, Bad Bunny. I'm seeing him in March.
Yeah. Oh, word. That's my
Bad
guy
Bunny.
too.
Bad Bunny. Number one. Number one artist on Spotify, I believe 2 years in a row.
Yeah, he's
I believe
beating
2 years
Drake.
in a row.
That's
Beating my boy
crazy.
Drizzy Drake. Beating my boy Drizzy, who's like, you know, who he's done music with.
Yeah.
So it's like two of my favorite artists doing music together in Spanish. We're also in a different time. The same way I was saying we're in a different time, how we receive music and how hip hop artists are perceived. We're in a different time for Latinx artists as
Mhm.
well. You know what I mean? And American artists
Mhm.
or Canadian artists to be singing in Spanish. And this has been ongoing. Drake back in the day did a song with Romeo Santos.
Yeah.
Uh, Wheezy's worked with Latin artists. That was there's different crossover that we see now more than ever. And then when you got like Cardi B, Bad Bunny, and like you know, his name is escaping me at this moment because I'm on the spot. Damn, it's terrible. Uh,
It's all right.
on the I like it on the I like it joint. If he hears this, he's like not gonna sign me. He's never gonna give me a chance because J Balvin. Oh my God, so
Yeah.
sorry,
Oh, that.
legend,
Yeah, yeah. I got
legend.
you. I like it
Um,
like
uh,
that.
uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a huge crossover record, and he's talked about like in his interviews being adamant about like speaking in Spanish, and like not needing to speak English and not understanding why that needed to be the standard. So, shout out to J Balvin, and I think he, in many ways, paved the way. Obviously, riding off of like another, like building on, not riding off of, but building on the success of other reggaeton artists from before. And then J Balvin, because he was doing it big in 2014. I remember him doing it big. And
Mhm.
then, that paved a lot of the way for sonically for the sound, like the melodic type of like urban Latin music that Bad Bunny came on the scene with. I think he paved the way, and so I would have to say favorite Latin artist will be Bad Bunny. Does it have to be any all time?
No, it doesn't have to be all time. It's just that who you listen to right now. Like
What am I
what's
listening
your
to right now?
who's vibing right
Okay,
now? Who's on that
right
Elias
now.
Ali playlist when he's not dropping fire ass
Funny
music?
enough, some classic stuff is there. So I might have to mention the classics as well. But I would
Word,
say Bad
word.
Bunny is like most frequent. Um, uh, J Balvin is there. Um, there's a classic artist that I listen to a lot. He's a Sosero,
Mm,
Andres Jimenez.
mm,
And his albums like take me somewhere, bro. And a
mm.
lot of times I'll be listening to that when I'm not firing off some good music. Like he has like a chill like salsa. He does a lot of like bomba y plena sounds, like the
Mhm,
jibaro music. In
mm.
fact, he's donned el jibaro, which um if you don't know means it's a Puerto Rican word for like a basically like a campesino in other
I
languages,
got
like a person from the campos, from the mountains who's like a countryman,
you.
maybe even a farmer or like a worker. It's the poor
Got
and
you.
working class, the peasant class of like Puerto Rico would be the Jibaros,
Mm,
living more primarily inland, usually.
mm.
And he's since like back in the day has proudly donned himself the Jibaro, El Jibaro, and
That's dope.
his music is wildly about like Puerto Rican nationalism and like independence and
That's
like
beautiful.
yeah, it's great. Andres Jimenez, Bad Bunny, J Balvin. I still listen to Mark Anthony. I like Mark
Word.
Anthony,
He's fire.
and then more recently like Rosalia. I enjoy some of her music.
Mm.
Um,
I'm
but
so happy I know these artists. That's why I know I love music because I'm just like I understand a lot of different artists from different. I'm just like I'm glad I know these artists. Like,
there's a lot of good artists that I've enjoyed, like individual songs here and there too that like deserve like honorable mentions. But
mm,
I think I'm pleased with that group that I'm gonna name right now.
mm,
Because those are the ones that I'm like doing deep dives into that I feel comfortable saying like these are artists that like I be listening to for real, for real. And then
right.
like sometimes like as far as Latin music, like I really enjoy nowadays just putting on like you know it might sound weird depending on the mood. I'll put on like really very live salsa, or you can ask like we have like Alexa. I'll be like, Alexa, play relaxing salsa music, because sometimes the beats are like a little bit more ding
Yeah.
ding ding ding, and you're hitting it with a little
Right.
slow vibe with the bing bing bing
Yeah.
bing cowbell just kind of rocking the vibe in the background.
Oh man, I love
Um,
playing the cowbell.
so
Love
important,
it.
so
Love it.
crucial, so crucial. Oh
Trying to
man,
learn
for
that shit.
Christmas I bought like I haven't given it to them yet, but for Christmas I bought like bags of just instruments for my nieces and
Right.
nephews, like little
Right.
baby instruments. So they're gonna have the huiro,
Nice. Nice.
they're gonna have the uh
The
what are
maracas.
the ones that the
Uh,
maracas, of course the
yeah.
maracas. Um, the words escaping me right now, but the king king king
Clave.
the two claves.
Claves. Yeah, I play
Um,
that professionally. I do gigs with that.
that's so dope. Are you
Yeah.
are you are you are you Caribbean? What's your background?
I'm Black American, but I'm a percussionist. I'm a rapper and a
Tough.
percussionist. Yeah. So
We need to work or
I
something,
play with
man.
that shit. Yeah. I love that shit. Especially like the rumba clave. I use that a lot in the sun clave. Doot, 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 doot,
Oh
doot, doot.
man.
I love that shit.
Oh man.
Yeah, I
Wow.
freaking like you were talking about the slow salsa. That's for people that want to learn percussion, slow salsa music and swing jazz and stuff like that. Those are great. Those are
Mm,
great genres to listen to learn how to like improv because that's why I'm learning right now, improvisation. Because you don't want to like I have more of a hip hop background is what Eric is telling me. So I'm used to the constant beat not changing, you know what I mean? So I have to
mm.
get back I have to get into switching it. And
Salsa will slowly get faster throughout the song.
yes.
And like for the type of music where you're trying to keep up with a bunch of percussionists. Because I just did that for the first real time in my life. Like we tried a
Yeah.
couple times, I've done it slowly, but my wife's family, her mother, my mother-in-law, great
Hmm.
woman. She was in Puerto Rico until she was 25 years old. So she's like Puerto Rican, like Boricua from the island. And then she moved to the Lower East Side where, her my father-in-law brought her back with him to New York and they
Right.
started a family there. So she's like really in tune with that side of the culture, and she be showing me like we were doing I got rhythm and stuff, but like we're playing this music and like we're trying to keep up with it, and like it gets faster like slowly, and it's like it's almost like you need to see a conductor to like get it perfect, but
Hmm.
or you have to have a good ear and you
Right.
got to listen and you got to stay on that, and naturally since it's like very like it keeps going and going, you have to make sure that you don't fall off, and like somebody with more than two or three people playing, somebody's going to get off tempo at some point.
At some point.
Somebody's going to
But
get
it's
off tempo.
always
So you got to make sure you jump back into it and don't let
right.
them mess you up. Yeah, I'm learning
Yep.
that. Yeah, that's cool. That's not
Count
easy.
yourself in. I always count myself in. You got to count yourself in. And don't count
Correct.
yourself in out loud, people. Count yourself in your head. Just focus and play when you're ready to play. Don't
Now
rush into it.
that almost sounded like a motivational speech. Count yourself in. don't count yourself out, man. You know what I mean?
You count yourself out when you force yourself to play, which I have made a lot of
Mm.
mistakes doing. When you force yourself to play, you lose that tempo. And when you lose
Mm.
that tempo, you may think that you're doing all right, but your bandmates, they hear you, they know you're not doing all right. And
They
they're
know
gonna
it.
tell you, they're gonna tell you.
I used to be in a rock band, dude. I haven't played with live
Word,
performance in a long time. Yeah, yeah,
word, man.
for like 4
What
years.
kind of rock band? Like
It
are you
was like
talking
heavy.
about
It was like
heavy?
heavy. Yeah,
Oh,
it was. Yeah, strangely it was heavy. Strangely it was heavy. It's like it's like it feels like another life to me. But then at the same time, like I still feel connected to that time. So
mm-hmm.
like I like when I understand when people are surprised because it's like so different. But I don't like when people are too surprised.
Yeah. But
Because
there's a
then I'm like,
connection.
well, because I'm like, exactly. Like I'm like, bro, like I I love music. I love drums.
Right.
When I heard that, I was like, this is mad rhythmic, like the double bass and the, you know what I mean? Like
It's
my
hard.
my
Hard.
and look, bro, I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. Like I kept it real. Like my band was like my drummer was a gospel drummer.
Yo, why are gospel musicians are always the best? They just seem to
Come on,
like know how
why?
to lay it down. Like
Why? Because
they
they
got
start when they're children. They
yeah,
start when they're children. They'll be sitting next to the drummer with a pad.
right.
They'll be sit. They'll be sitting next to the drummer with the pad. You ever seen that?
Yep. Yep.
I've seen that a lot in Baltimore. I've performed at a lot of churches. Whether it have been with my band, I performed at a couple churches, and I used to be in a choir. That's where I got a
Mm,
lot of my vocal training.
mm,
It was called the Milford Mill Concert Chorale.
nice.
I
Nice.
was the brightest thing in the whole choir. I was the like
Word.
not the brightest singing wise. I'm talking about when the lights were on stage.
Oh, okay, got you. You had
I
the
was literally the
you had the
brightest because
movie
of my fair
face.
skin.
Oh,
Because of
okay,
my
got
because of my fair skin. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was just like yeah, it was like what's that one like what's that one different kid? Like it was
you.
like that. It was like that. And like bro, I've never been the best musician around the people that I was in. I wasn't the best musician around like my sisters growing up.
Mm,
Like my sisters would sing beautifully and just never had that passion for like poetry and like writing and like they never wrote their own songs and they never got into it. But like it's just always been my passion.
mm.
When I was in that choir, there were people that were singing circles around me.
Tell it.
Again, another reason why I was doing a different style of music because I was like, where can I fit in? Like I would try and rap and I was like, nah, because like I'm not tough enough. I'm not like just like straight up G. I thought that's what you had to be a hip hop artist at that time.
I went through the same thing, man. I thought the same thing. I felt like I wasn't
Then
tough enough.
exactly. Then with R&B, which I've always loved, it's always been a part of me. People just didn't know it. Because I wasn't going to try to sing R&B because R&B singers, especially 10, 15 years ago,
Yeah,
come on, bro. Like they were singing.
yeah,
They would
for
look
sure.
at me and say, you cannot sing. Like you should not sing.
Right.
That's, you can sing like in a crowd of people singing, but you should not be the one on the stage. Like that's how singers are. You know what I mean? Like soul, gospel, that's real stuff. So I was like, I can't do that. I tried and I learned a lot from it. And I can I got some range but like there's just some people that like they've always had that like skill and they were around singers that were like really training them from like a young age and they studied that and
Mm,
lucky
mm,
for me, I enjoyed rock music
yeah.
and it was easier to smuggle in rock bands. It was. It
Yeah,
was because I told you, like I had to like a lot of bands use a lot of spiritual connotations in their lyrics.
do. I
So I
listen
would
to a
take
lot of rock music too. They do.
so I would take bands and be like, you see, he mentioned God, he talked about this, he's talking about heaven, he's
Yeah,
talking about hell, he's talking about good, he's talking about evil. So it was easier, whereas like rap artists tend to talk about their immediate surroundings.
yeah, right.
Especially I feel like rap that might not even be as true now. But it still
With certain,
it's a
you know who real, who's not.
correct,
Basically.
correct, correct. But even with that, like even with that, right? Like it's still in a lot of ways very literal.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So in that sense, like they're still talking about like the things that are around them, like tangible things. Whereas like a rock song, you could listen to it and you don't know what he's talking about.
What are you talking about?
And it
Yeah.
could sound great and you could love it.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I liked. And then there was this guitarist friend of mine. He was a Salvadorian. Salvadorian. I don't think you're supposed to say El Salvadorian. He was from his family's from El Salvador. And it's like gothic. I would say he was like kind of gothic at that time period. I don't know if he would, maybe just a metalhead, he would have described himself, but could play some sick ass fucking Spanish guitar, bro. And like,
you ever heard of Pierce
like,
the Veil?
Correct. Yeah, I've seen them live.
Yo, all right, that's who I was thinking of when you said that, because they're like metal and Spanish guitar as well. Like they're
so that's how he was raised, like with classical Spanish guitar. So when he moved to like guitar, like on some metal,
right,
he was killing it. Just just killing it, doing all kind of shit. So me, I came in with this like I grew up on so many different artists. I was like, we could do like a rock, rap, R&B collide. That was my dream. That's where I was at.
What happened?
He was on straight metalcore. Straight metalcore. And he was the guitarist, and he wrote a lot of amazing riffs. And I was young and impressionable, and I liked some of that. Oh, I started to listen to some of that music. I connected with some of it. I wasn't like the deepest, but I connected with a good chunk of it. Like I studied it the same way I studied everything else. The same way I get into like salsa and want to know about the classics to the now. And when I listen to reggae, I want to listen to like the old 60s stuff before I go and listen to, the 70s and 80s or before I listen to reggae of today. That's how I was with rock. I went back to like I got the Let Out, 1969 and 1970, album 1 through 3, you know what I mean? Front to back, constantly, just to get that. And I realized, oh, this is blues.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, this isn't that different.
Oh, yeah.
He was talking about like, you shook me, baby. You shook me all night long. Like all that like way of like just I'm like, this is jazz vocals over like a boom 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 boom. I'm like, oh, this is like, been dazed and confused for so long, it's not true. He was like really soulful. So I dug that, and I was trying that, and I went forward. And the time period where we were growing up, I say we, I don't even know how old you are. I think you're younger than me.
We're the same age, bro.
30 even?
I turned 30 in April.
I beat you by a few months.
Yeah.
I'm officially an OG. I'm officially an OG, man. You know what I mean? Officially. I got to say shit different now. I got to say officially. And I got to say mature, not mature. I'm a little bit, my palate is a little bit more mature. On some shit. I don't know. Things got to be a little altered.
That's funny. No, it's facts though. You know what I mean? Like, they're just talking about the origins of like what metal is today. Like that it coincides with exactly like what my issue with what we were talking about earlier with hip hop artists that don't really listen to hip hop, don't know hip hop, don't know where it's from, but they're good with it, but they don't care to know anything else about it. It's the same thing with metal. There's a lot of metal that, and a lot of artists do acknowledge it, but it has moved into a different realm where the past is so long, because it's like blues is like what 1920s or some shit like that. Like it's such a long, vibrant. It's over 100 years of that type of genre connection expanding in so many different other genres. So it's the re-education process. And I feel like once you learn all that, you become even greater, because all the artists that are great as hell, you hear what they listen to, or the musicians that you hear what they listen to, they know it. They know it. That's why you got the Beatles, the last remaining living Beatles, like Paul McCartney, acknowledging Little Richard, because he knows where he got his sound from. He knows. All the greats know. So if you want to be
All
great,
the
kid,
greats know. All the greats know. All the greats
they
know.
know. Mike,
All
all
the
the
greats
people
know.
Michael Jackson fucked with, all the people that he fucked with when he was alive.
Sometimes, like, you know, something crazy. Like, I went to this. This is a deep. This is, I'm gonna go a little deeper into exactly what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
because like all the greats know, but like the truth of the matter is, societally, like, do we really know?
Mm.
Some of it gets so deep, like when you really getting into studying these things, these collective histories, these separate histories, these combinations. You mentioned salsa. I mentioned salsa earlier. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned when you're learning percussion, you want to listen to slow salsa and jazz.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I've listened to salsa and realized salsa is a ballroom style of music.
Yep.
Sure, it evolved from bomba y plena y rumba y mambo y song from Cuba, you know, some Cuban styles and some
Mm-hmm.
Dominican styles and some Puerto Rican styles. But it was really truly like it all culminated in New York City in the 1960s in ballroom dancing. You know what I mean? Where it
Mm-hmm.
developed to be this thing. And there's certainly predecessors, absolutely. But when salsa was realized as this like amalgamation of all these like artists, it was in the 1960s in New York City, and it spread, and Miami, and so on and so forth. Now, there would be no salsa without jazz either.
Yep.
There will be, and like salsa also had like a little bit of an influence the other way, a little bit on some
Mm-hmm.
of the like, you know, trumpet players would go to like Cuba and like hear
Yeah.
artists perform there and they'd perform and, you know, trade ideas. So it's like these things are connected, you know what I mean? And like, you know, you know, I don't know. I just think that's really cool. So, oh, and then with the blues and the rock and the hip hop and, you know, it's just like, you know, that's why I guess like growing up hearing bands like Linkin Park just made sense to me, where it
Right.
was like those bands were like a new realization of like what it could be. And I
Right.
actually feel like rock died. This is my theory. This is my hot take of the whole thing.
Mm.
Rock died because a lot of modern rock stars wouldn't recognize the origins
That's exactly what I was about to get into.
and weren't able and you know I think it's you know obviously because of racism and maybe
Yes.
even a little bit of genre jealousy.
Right.
You know, rock was taking on so many forms and they were all rebelling against each other sonically. You know what I
Right.
mean? You had like the punk movement, which would be created a bunch of subcultures within that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
metal became a totally different thing from what its origins were. But when I think about metal and the persona of metal, even that, like, they stole from the, you know, LGBTQIA community
Mm-hmm.
or maybe originally were part of it and borrowed from it. But
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, you think about the way the metal dress, the
Yeah.
spikes, the dominatrix influence, like, you know,
Right.
origins of the style, the goth
Yeah.
thing,
Right.
um, body modifications. That's indigenous stuff. We've been doing that for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Yes.
This is our stuff. This is indigenous. This is
Mm-hmm.
African. This is you know all over Afro-Asia. You know what I mean? Like this is all over indigenous tribes of like ancient Europe. We're doing this. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this has been going on. This is not the status quo of America, of Western
Mm-hmm.
culture, of modern Western culture. So that's why like when kids are being rebellious, that's naturally what they go to.
Right.
So
I
I'm
was a
like,
metalhead.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there you go.
I was a metalhead. I still feel like I'm still rebellious though, but in a more mature, activist way, like rebellious and we need to change this system. Rebellious instead of
You
I
were a
just
true
gotta
rebel.
be yes
You're
yeah
you're a true rebel, as am I. You see what I'm saying? You weren't
right
doing it just to rebel for fun. You
right
realize like, no, like I'm trying to do this shit for real. Like, oh, you were just in an energy when you were like angry and young. No, I'm still angry. I'm
still
still wanting to see. And I realized that like, oh, like I have to be tactical. I have to be smart.
mm,
I have to be militant.
exactly
I have to take care of myself. I have to take care of my community and like my people. I have to
right
try. I have to make mistakes and try again. I have to, hit the streets. I have to be seen somewhere,
yeah, yep
right?
yep
I have to
yep
do the work of myself internally.
yep
There's a
Yep.
lot. I gotta study.
Yep. I wish metal. I wish a lot of metal artists would hear this podcast and will not release it. I hope that happens. I'm gonna try to put it in there because I know a few. And we try to share it around because it's so true. If
I
you
want
kind of
everybody.
feel like
I
you're
want
the
I want hip
other,
hop heads to listen to it too, because I
yo,
don't want
hell yeah.
because
Well,
there's hip
everybody,
hop
yeah,
heads that
but
are closed. There's hip hop heads
yep,
that are like so just on like certain, like just hip hop as a whole, or certain subgenres, like a certain era
yes,
of hip hop, that it's like, dude, like there was predecessors to that, and there's things that are now. You know what I mean?
right.
And we can enjoy all those things at the same time, especially now. We don't live in a. I think my phone's like syncing on me. We don't live in a. We live in the most accessible to music time. You
Yes, we
know,
do, and it's amazing. You could literally travel the world in your phone. Just travel the world in
and
your
I do
phone.
regularly. Yeah, it's important to. Yeah, it's
It's so
important to.
great. All those sounds, everything that connects, like it's just it's amazing. It's a big privilege to have that. Like
Hundred
I pay
percent.
for title, and I pay for title just because of that. Because title gives me access to a lot of those things. I know people like Spotify. Yes, y'all like Spotify, but I like title. Title's
I
nice.
want to. I want to also add something to what we were talking about influence. I've
Yes.
had a thought that the screaming in metal, right?
Mm.
I've had a thought that like, because like you ever heard of like the indigenous like throat singing?
Yes, especially up in here in North America, where you hear
I don't
a
know. I
lot of
just
it.
like look at the history of imperialism, you look how many people, how many Americans, how many Westerners, how many English people, how many people have traveled all throughout Latin America, starting businesses. You know, they had kids. Like I work in an
Mhm.
assisted living, and like there's people that were like raised in like Venezuela because their like father worked for like an oil company or like like a fruit company. You know what I mean? And it's like they speak Spanish and like they speak these different languages from these different countries that they live in. They speak, or they lived in Philippines on an army base for like years. They have spread throughout the whole world and like come back with these ideas. Like even if you look at punk and like ska is like basically like from reggae music. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
so much of it is influence. So like if you don't know these styles of music or you say you don't like these styles, you're actually like selling yourself kind of short because there's
yeah,
so
you
much
are,
good music that you're selling yourself short of like the inactive ingredients, like the active ingredient,
and it'll
right?
make you so much greater. It's really not it the cost of delving into all this knowledge that you don't really know about makes your value as an artist so much greater. Just all the
I think
cost of
so.
your
Yeah,
time.
I think so. I hope so.
Well,
But
if
I
you
think,
do
but
it
I think
right,
it. Yeah, 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 yeah,
gotta do
yeah.
it right.
Got to do it right.
Journals, your new
Let's get it.
project,
Let's talk
Journals.
about it. Let's talk about
Great,
it.
great fucking project, man.
Thank you. You enjoyed it?
Yes, yes it did.
Good,
Yes it did.
good.
Great fucking project.
Thank you.
My favorite song right now on that project is definitely Baby Chain, and actually it's two. It's Baby Chain and Reminiscing.
Okay, okay, okay. You like my flows. You like my
I like the
rap. I
voice.
like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I tried to bring it.
Fire.
I tried to bring it. I tried to bring it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I like how you make them short too. You know what I mean? Like you understand that the listener time could be like, you know, screwed up. They don't have time to listen to like these 24 track songs that other artists are dropping right now.
Yeah.
You keep it consistent. I mean, like, look, you can literally listen to this new project Journals, and your other project Love by the Moment, which is also still newly new, in all 30 minutes of your time. Put it right on repeat.
Mm,
You can listen to the whole album with no problem, like
yeah.
12
Yeah.
times in a day. Don't even realize it.
That's tough.
What's the
That's tough.
what was the message that you're trying to get across to your audience with Journals?
Journals honestly was like more of like a personal release.
Mm,
That's why I called it that. That's why I earned that title.
mm,
Um, I would say like if you listen to Late Nights, track 6, like
yep.
I make reference to times in my life that like are like long past.
Mm-hmm.
because I wrote that song years ago
Mm,
and it didn't have a home.
mm.
And every time I had a project, like I had it like since Belong to the Night in 2019 when I did my song
Yeah,
like Good Vibes.
that's a fire EP, by the way. I love that
Thank you.
EP.
That's one of my like I always am trying to outdo that one because that's my favorite type of music to listen to. I
Yo,
really
those
enjoy it.
Latin riffs that you had on there, woo,
You
man.
said the
Oh,
what?
the Latin riffs you had on there, woo, fire, man,
Thank you, man. I appreciate
fire.
that. Like I really wanted to implement like a Caribbean sound,
Mm,
which I think I achieved on Sunsets, Good Vibes,
mm-hmm,
um, and on the bonus track, Shake It Off as well. You
mm-hmm,
know, Belong to the Night, the title track also has a
mm-hmm.
Caribbean vibe. So there's 4 songs out of the 7 that have a Caribbean vibe on Belong to the Night. And I think my message for that one was more like I was learning a process of like letting go.
Right. Nice.
And while I was writing that project, some of the ideas for journals, which came years later, obviously just dropped in November. Um, a lot of those artists were fermented years ago. A
Mm,
whole song that was fermented from that time, and I even make reference to my mom who has passed on the song
mm-hmm,
in the present tense in the song because I
mm-hmm,
wrote it at that time.
mm-hmm.
But at that song, I think was the catalyst for like an explosion of more music.
Right.
But either every time like I had like one or two that would go with that, I would end up putting it on a different project that was like more lovey dovey. So "Belongs to the Night" was kind of like fun, and it was like I'm letting go of this heartbreak, and I'm having fun, and I'm
Mm,
learning about myself, and I'm vibing, and I'm realizing that I belong to the night. I'm not a possession to be had. You
mm-hmm,
belong to the night. You're not a possession to be had. Like learning like what true love
mm-hmm,
is. That's what that project is. But like the hurt wasn't expressed on it.
mm.
The 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 I'm single and I want to be a smut wasn't expressed. Wasn't expressed. And journals is like my more like kind of dark. Like I don't want to say not positive. I think it's a positive project still, just because that's genuinely who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But it is more of a dark project, I would say. That's why, like, when I was trying to write a journals type project, Love by the Moment came out, which is just like a much more lovey-dovey, very alternative R&B project, and none of these songs really master that. So I finally felt like I was ready to record these songs, and I also think it's a culmination of like past sounds into what I sound like today. I think it's a good balanced project. I have a good like I've had projects that have been like almost exclusively rap, and I've had projects that were like almost exclusively singing, like
Mm.
Love by the Moment and Belong to the Night. And this
Yep.
one is consistently both throughout. Like I bring you the
Right.
bars, I bring you the flows.
Right.
I it's not completely overtly political, but I do bring some politics in on Baby Chain. You know what I mean? And some strong political references. Not just like I was like, if I'm gonna do it on this song, I'm gonna say some really strong stuff.
Right.
I've shouted out Breakthrough News. You know, check out Breakthrough News. Awesome.
Yes.
Run by the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and just
Yep.
like
I had Monica
a
on here
good.
last. She was my first episode for season 2. Actually, I had
I didn't
Monica
see you.
on.
I didn't see that.
Oh, you
I got
did?
to see that one.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I got to see that. Monica's a great friend of mine. Besides just being a comrade,
Mm-hmm.
um, I love that person so much. She's a great fighter. She's a great like Boricua comrade and sister of mine. You know, we've had like adventures, parties, so many
Right.
like excursions out into Brooklyn and like all kinds of hours just to get to some like dope party. Oh
That's dope.
man, oh man, yeah, yeah. And then also like she was an influence on my like I think politics.
Mm.
I was like a baby socialist, you know. I don't even think I don't even think I wasn't a socialist. I don't think when I met her.
Mm.
I think that's where it was. Like I was like learning about radical politics through like my upbringing and my music,
Right. Right.
but I
Right.
wasn't like I'm a radical revolutionary socialist. I was just like I'm nonpartisan. I don't fuck with these parties.
Mm.
In fact, I've always been that way. But the one time at that time that I met her, I had just and I met other comrades. I had just for the first time was voting as a Democrat because Bernie was running. That's where I was politically in 2016.
Yep, me too, man.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? Like I'm like 100% radicalized right now. Like I'm like,
so we joined at the same time, basically.
I don't know if I joined fully that time, but that was when I was like putting my toe in the water and like, you know, meeting people and like, I can't remember if I moved in it. I think I was around that area in 2015, but I was on my hip hop vibe. I thought I was going to go down. I was trying to go down a mainstream hip hop vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to like, in fact, denounce some of like my, you know, better qualities. Like I didn't want to be too soft. I was like, I'm reconnecting. Like I was living in the Bronx and I was just on my solo dolo vibes and I was in some dark vibes. You know what I mean? I don't even know if like how I was feeling on the inside, like, you know, and I think socialism saved me. I think socialism saved me. I had some sleazy lyrics that like I wouldn't have written today. And I like my friend Henry. I met him at the New York Poets Cafe, of all places, and saw a bunch of people perform. I can't remember if I did a performance like a poem or that time, but I met Henry, who was a PSL member and great comrade to this day. He just got married. I was in the wedding, and you know, like these connections that are different from people that were just good people that cared about the world. And I was like, I always wanted to like do something different because the music artists that I love, like Rage Against the Machine and Bob Marley and, you know, these artists, I was like, I want to say something. I want to say something deeper. So honestly, it was selfish reasons. I was like, I want to come around here for inspiration for my music so that I could say something more real. But they had more influence on me than my music. And then it influenced my music, you know, like they were like, we got to hit the streets right now. I didn't even plan on going to a protest. Like I just was at something and they were talking. I was like fired up. And they're like, yeah, so we're going right now. We're like, everybody grab a sign. And I was like, what? Like I was scared of getting arrested. I was very scared of like marching in the streets and the police coming around. Like I was in a totally different headspace. I was like, I got weed on me. Like I had like a big bag of weed in my pocket. I was like, yo, like weed wasn't like decriminalized at that time. You know, I was like, and we were marching like anti-Trump, just like yelling, and the cops are blocking in the blockade in the street. I'm like, oh no, like we're just gonna march into this. Like, I don't know if I'm feeling this. You know what I mean? You know, that's where I was at, and like I was like really critical of like academic spaces and like really like just like defensive. I think I had like a very like, you know, like I was just on my Proud Boricua, like Bronx vibes. I was like, these people aren't going to tell me what's right. I'm not going to listen to all these like academic, like white spaces, like telling me like about history. But then like, you know, they were telling me some shit that like I didn't. And then I realized like, I like the way they moved.
Right.
I like the platform that they provided for Black and brown folks. I liked it a lot, and I was like,
and you didn't feel tokenized. You actually felt like you was being heard
for the first time, bro.